So good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see you after what seems like an incredibly long hiatus. So this afternoon, we don't have our typical Dean's Distinguished Lecture, but actually we have a special screening of, I think, a very powerful film called Picture a Scientist. As you know, the School of Biological Sciences has been really committed to eliminating sexual harassment and gender bias so that we create an environment where everyone feels like they belong. So a few years ago, we began a program to shift our culture to one of inclusion and equity, and we put in mechanisms in place to make sure that reporting structures are there and everyone can get help. And we established a new position, which Professor Michael Yassa is leading. He's now our Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I saw him here. He's in the back. Mike, just wave real fast. And we have several of our equity advisors, decade advisors, and representation from the UCI Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity here as well. So I have seen this film, and I can tell you it's very powerful. It may not be easy to watch, but it certainly made me aware of a lot of implicit biases. And I think it's important to share with the community, even though it is a little bit raw. I think it's also important to emphasize that we want to take a very strong stance and help foster a sense of community so you do not feel alone if this has happened to you. We also want to increase awareness of this problem and to think and talk together about how we can work better to try and solve it and to become better allies. So with this, I have to say I'm very pleased and grateful to Professor Christie Fowler from the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior, who actually brought this idea to me about hosting this Picture a Scientist film event, and she will be moderating the panel. So with that, let's welcome Professor Christie Fowler.
Okay, thank you, Frank. I really appreciate you giving importance to this issue and letting us have this event. Just kind of by a show of hands, how many of you have already seen the movie? Okay, so we have some people who are back here again. I think it's really interesting. I've seen this movie a couple times now, and I think it's, every time I learn something new, and I think it's really powerful. So I am going to be a panelist. I'll be moderating, and I'll be moderating alongside Dr. Aimee Edinger, and so she is from the, Developmental and Cell Biology Department. She's an equity advisor within the UCI School of Biological Sciences. And then Dr. Susanna Cohen-Cory, and so she is a professor in neurobiology and behavior, and she's also the decade mentor. And so we're going to come in after the movie. We'll have our more formal introductions. Why did we want to do this? Why are we here? But before we get to the movie, I also wanted to introduce Rachel Busta from the Office of Equity, Opportunity, and Diversity, and she would like to share a couple comments.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fowler. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm so happy to be here today, and I can't wait to view this movie with you. This film documents inequity that women face and still face within the sciences. One of the scientists portrayed in the film particularly highlights harassment and discrimination in remote field settings. Field research can be one of the most exciting opportunities in science. Valuable insights and innovations come from experiences in the field. It can be really fun and exciting. And yet, at the same time, many of the aspects that make fieldwork wonderful can also lead to dangerous situations in climates that foster inequity, discrimination, and harassment. So I wanted to briefly take this time to share a little bit about the prevention work that we're doing here. I also need to take a breath because I am speaking with a mask on publicly for the first time, and that is very difficult to do. I feel like I'm like gasping for air. So my hat's off to you. So in spring 2021, the Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity, which is our Title IX office here on campus, and the leadership of the UCI Environmental Collaboratory partnered to create UCI's first full-day training workshop for graduate students on preventing and responding to discrimination, sexual harassment, and sexual violence in field settings. Modeled off in support by the leadership of UC Santa Cruz, UCI's Field Safety 201 workshop aims to generate a safe and healthy climate for all researchers, regardless of their identity. The workshop covers general field safety, discrimination and microaggressions, sexual harassment and sexual violence, bystander intervention, and campus resources and reporting processes. So if you're interested in requesting this workshop, please contact our Title IX officer, Tierney Anderson, or the director of the Center of Environmental Biology, Dr. Sarah Kimball. You can also touch base with me. I'll be sitting over there. We have more information about this workshop and other resources on our campus at the UCI Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity website. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the movie.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Rachel. So I guess we're ready. We're ready for the movie, yeah? All right, okay. Okay, so it's pretty powerful movie, I would say. I expect that most of us had an emotional reaction to it. And so why we're here is because, after watching this movie, I think there's some really important themes and topics. And so for this part of the panel discussion, we really wanted to have like an audience discussion as well. We have 2 microphones. And once we kind of get all set up here, we're going to invite the audience to come up and join us in this discussion, this conversation. It's a really important topic, and I'm sure that a lot of you have something important that you want to say, and we'd like to hear you. So before we begin, we wanted to note that the panel that we're going to be doing is different than a typical panel discussion. Aimee, Susanna, and I were women and scientists. We're scientists first. Our experiences don't represent the total experiences of women. And we believe that we personally still have a lot to do as we kind of try and navigate and develop new ways to be effective allies to promote women in science with the goal of equality. And that's what we're really hoping for. Following from this point, we would like to set the tone for the discussion as one of open and mutual respect. This discussion will be covering sensitive topics, and in order to stay trauma-informed, we encourage everyone to stay presently focused, safety-oriented, and limit personal disclosures. Just note that this is not a confidential space. I and the other panelists are here in your capacity as UCI employees, and therefore we're obligated to report any student disclosures of sexual harassment, sexual violence, and discrimination to the Office of Equity, Opportunity, and Diversity. So if we could just speak in generalities, that would probably be the best for the discussion. And then if anybody's interested, we can connect you with the Office of Equity, Opportunity, and Diversity. And there's also UCI Care, which offers confidential support as well as other resources. So along these lines, all of your comments and experiences are really important and valuable. As noted in the video, discrimination of women really cuts across society, independent of position, socioeconomic status, ethnic background, age. And so we just want to make sure everybody's respectful of each other. And we're not going to have all the answers. These are things that have been really systemic throughout history, but we're really here just to moderate an honest discussion. And we hope that this discussion can focus us on ways to really empower ourselves and to better support women, both men and women, in the audience. And I can't see now because all the lights are in my eyes, but just to give a shout out to the men that are here to support women, I think that's really remarkable. And I applaud you for coming and being here as our allies as well, because we can't do it alone. And with that, I'd like to invite Susanna and Aimee to come up to the panel. Oh, thank you. I mean, I have to say, we're really anxious in doing this topic because it is so personal. Okay, there we go. Now we can see the people so much better. Okay, so I'm going to ask Aimee and Susanna to introduce themselves and ask them to tell us why they volunteered to help lead the discussions today.
All right, thank you guys for coming, and I second Christie's big thank you to all the guys who are here. We really appreciate that. This isn't a women's issue. So my name is Aimee Edinger, and I am a professor in developmental and cell biology. I've been here for about 17 years. I've been a full professor for about 3. I've been the equity advisor for just about 5 years, and the equity advisor is tasked with trying to help defend against implicit bias in faculty hiring and also promotion, and I work with the dean to try and promote salary equity in our school. This issue is super important to me. I have 2 teenage daughters, and a lot of the things in the film really hit home for me.
Hi, I'm Susanna Cohen-Cory. I'm a professor in neurobiology and behavior. I have been here at UCI for 19 years. I was previously also an equity advisor, and now I am the Decade Mentor. So it's a program for diversity and inclusion for graduate students and postdocs at UCI, and each school and department has a Decade Mentor. So I'm one of many that are working towards the goal of bringing equal opportunities for all graduate students and postdocs. And I want to disclose something so that we just saw today. We saw how Nancy Hopkins began this trend of being aware of the differences that were there in equity for faculty across the nation. And thanks to her initiatives, it also created a big change here at UCI. There was a program that was funded by NSF, that's what started the equity program. That was initiated also by a former dean of the School of Biological Sciences, Sue Bryant. And through that funding, it was that the School of Biological Sciences started to hire more women to our school, and that also led the trend throughout the entire campus. And that's what began also the equity program, so the equity advisors and a lot of the diversity programs here at UCI.
Okay, and I guess I should introduce myself. So Christie Fowler, as Dean LaFurler said, I'm in the Associate Professor, Department of Neurobiology and Behavior, and why I'm here today is because, I see myself as not only a woman, but as, a mother, as a daughter. I see myself as a wife. I see myself as a mentor for many trainees in my lab, and I see myself as a mentor for future trainees that are going to be coming through. I'm also director of the Interdepartmental Neuroscience Program, and so as part of that, I really take it seriously to educate myself on ways to identify explicit and implicit biases and be able to address those so we can have a more equitable, environment for ourselves. And I think that based on my own experiences, it's, from talking to people who have come before me, I think my experience has been much better. And I hope to then, make a better experience for the people who are coming after me as well. So, okay, so then turning kind of out to you in the audience, just by a raise of hands, let's see who's here. We got our registrations, but the people that register don't always come. So out of all of you here, how many of you are community members? Okay, how many are undergraduate students? Okay, so okay. That's awesome. We'd like to see you guys here. I recognize some of you, N153. Graduate students. Okay, so great representation of graduate students. Staff. Okay, yes. And faculty. Okay, well, thank you for coming. I think that, having everybody here across all those different divides is really important. So how did you all feel as you watched the video? Just, again, by a raise of hands, were any of you really surprised by what you saw? So a couple people were surprised, perhaps. How many of you were angry? Okay, I was angry. How many of you kind of disbelieved it, or like, this can't be happening, right, in this day and age? How many of you had no reaction? Like, oh, I already knew this was going on, and it's just what it is. Okay, well, that's good to see that. And did your feelings change by the time you got to the end of the video? So was anybody kind of a little bit hopeful? A little bit? A little tiny bit? Hopefully some optimism there, maybe no change. So I think for me, that was the third time that I've seen it, and every time I just get a very visceral reaction from it, because it's very, it really kind of gets at you. So we wanted to kind of ask the audience, ask you if anybody would like to come up to microphones, if you'd like to express, was anything really surprising to you, if there's something that you weren't surprised about. Anybody want to jump up? I could turn to do you want to come up or you could, if you have a loud voice, you can yell.
So the movie is powerful. The end of the movie, the result is kind of disappointing. The reason is kind of they remove this the problem. They didn't go to the deeper to find why this happened. They fired the professor. It's only, I think that is they put these things on the social problem.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't see the biology or psychologically, science, or the personal, the nature behavior.
Yeah, I think it's an important point that there's a lot of other things going on that's systemic throughout institutions, right? It's not just that we had one bad apple, David Marchant, like he's just a bad person and we have to get rid of him and then everything is cured, right? But there's a lot more systemic issues that are going on there that should be addressed in addition to identifying and removing this person from ever being able to mentor future students. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
Well, you didn't ask if any retirees were here.
Any retirees?
But I think the problem is as bad as it is, has a long history, longer than most people think. I think it began with cultural anthropologists and how they understood Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal, with the man taking the hunting skills and pretty much everything else, and the woman was left at home to do what she did.
Yeah.
Recently, NOAA had a program that seems to have changed the belief in that, and I think that's going to help if it goes further.
Yeah.
And that women and men were hunters. Men, generally because they were larger and stronger, went for the big animals. Women went for the small ones, but did every bit as much as the men. And went even further, at least the program I saw in NOVA, they were thought to be the beginnings of the medical field, and that the women were responsible for treating whatever wounds they had when they came back with plant species that they have found to be useful.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to help.
Yeah.
And I think that belief is where archaeological anthropology is going.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't heard of that.
Just saw that recently.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, one of the moments for me as being an equity advisor is we are all encouraged to take the implicit bias test. And if you guys haven't done that, you should go do it. If you go to Project Implicit on the web. Just Google it. It's the website at Harvard, and you can take a whole variety of tests. So I've taken the one looking for implicit bias against women scientists, and every single time I come out moderately biased against women scientists. I've emailed the people and said, this can't be, it's because you made me take the test in this order and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, the more you think about it, though, it's so pervasive in our society, right? Like, I played with Barbies. We were talking about, you go to Target, you can tell which is the boys aisle and which is the girls aisle, right? My sister-in-law gave my teenage daughter obviously girly socks that said, I hate math. Right? You know, it's just like so many tiny things in our world, on television, on our phones, on magazines, in the checkout line are giving us these messages. And it's going to take a long time to have a major shift, but I think we all do our part.
So there was a term that was brought up by one of the people that were not Jane, Rachel, that was her name, right? Rachel, and this is implicit bias, imposter syndrome. And I think that for me, actually, it's a new concept. And this is a concept that I think we all have to erase. And I know that we are aware and we talk about it, but who is an imposter? I mean, we all are fighting super hard I think that none of us are imposters, right? And when anyone says, well, do you have an imposter syndrome? We have to be sure of who we are. And we have to teach our students that they have to be sure of who they are, because they can do anything if they want to do it. So I think that just eliminating this, the doubt in the woman so that they can go out and speak out. And I know that it's not easy. You have to be in a secure place to feel that you can go and say whatever you think. But I think that that's the message that, and these women were extremely brave. They are extremely brave to come out and say what they thought and not feel that they are not worthy. And I think that that's the main thing that we have to kind of teach us as faculty, us as women in science, and my opinion.
Yeah, I would just say that I think it's hard, right? I think it's hard to say that because we're socialized ever since we're young that, you know, we're not going to be good enough, or we're not going to be able to do well. And it's not something that, you know, you go to college and automatically we can erase that as college professors, right? And so I think it's so hard because it is so ingrained. Like even when I was in college, I wanted to take a biology course, and I was told that, you know, oh, don't take that biology class because that professor thinks it's his mission to weed out the people who are not going to make it in medicine. And so if you look, you know, a lot of women didn't pass, but a lot more men did. And I never took the course because I was terrified because everybody told me how terrible it was. And so, you know, because of that, I limited my potential because of the fear of not being good enough or not being able to do it.
But I'm sure you teach your daughter that she can do it. And I think that's the deal, right? As we're going along, we are the ones that have to teach our kids and our kids here in the audience that they can do it. Everyone can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, here comes the microphone right behind you.
Okay. First, I want to say thank you for putting this on. And so, yeah, the movie brought up a lot of emotions, not only the ones that were. So I need a lot of time to process some emotions, but it also showed me how much we endure. And also, I endured already in my, I think, short career for now. And but one thing is, I also want to be, because I was somehow missing a role model. So I had my grandma, my mom, but none of them were in science. I grew up in a little town, and so I was always missing a female role model who's in science and like, oh, made it, it's a science, so on. So I always wanted to be one, and right now I'm battling more in like, am I even appreciated or taken seriously in a lot of cases? But at the end of the movie, they also said there's some progress, and we have this pipeline that we are feeding with female scientists, or in general, young girls that are supposed to go into science, and then we have these leakages. But at the same time, I also know, and this is now only just something that I know from Germany, we have these numbers that need now be filled with women. Like, okay, 5% of CEOs, 5% of faculty staff, or I don't know, it's just a number that I made up, need to be women. And then awards are being saying, and then how are we supposed to feel now when we get this award, when we get this position? And it's like, did we get this position because we earned it, because we are good? Or did we get it because we have to fill now this percentage, this gap that the world now wants to fill, which is still male-led? And I think, I don't know, I cannot speak for them, but I don't know if ever a man who got a position or got an award or something felt like, did I earn it? Because it was just like, of course I earned it because I'm good. And so how do we get the confidence as women to say, okay, yeah, we earned it because we're good, because we are just constantly kept small? Or the society tries to be better, but still there's always this insecurity in that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really valid point. Aimee, I see you picking up your...
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of literature and data out there to support that point of view. Women are sort of raised to downplay their accomplishments, right? And guys are like taught to, yeah, it's okay to say I'm cool, I'm the best, right? And so when women step out of that role, they actually tend to get punished for it, right? Because they're not fulfilling the expectations. Self-promotion is super hard for women. And so one of the things that I am focused on as an equity advisor is trying to encourage everyone to be better allies for women. And that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about here, right? And there's also a lot of evidence that while women aren't always good advocates for themselves, they are exceptional advocates for other women. And so I think and men are, of course, exceptional advocates for women as well. And so the more we can work together and help promote women that have problems promoting themselves because of their own upbringing and what society does when you push it, that can really help, I think, working together and supporting each other.
And I would just say, too, that a man pointed out to me, another scientist friend, that, he's never thought of that. Like, when he got his faculty position, he never second-guessed it. Am I getting it because, I'm not good enough and they're just trying to fill a slot? And that's because, they've never had to do that. They've always been in a position of privilege, where things have been always handed to them, right? And he would never say, well, because I'm in a position of privilege, I shouldn't accept this job, right? So that would never even cross their mind. So it's hard. It's a struggle. I see my postdoc Larry back there in the audience, and so we've talked about this. She's from Italy, and at her institution, I think it was her professor, Laura Dazzi, was saying that they were coming up, they need to increase their women numbers, and so they were going to have this pink track or something like that. So, and first of all, why'd you call it a pink track? I mean, come on now, But, it's like if you got hired in the pink track, then all the other male faculty are going to be like, well, obviously, that's why you got here, right? But I think it's a challenge, and I think that we just got to say as women that we deserve it, that there was a ton of other applicants. Those people didn't get it. I got it, and I'm going to, show that I got it. And I think that's part of the problem, too, with me personally, is that because then I get put in this position where I'm going to show that I deserve to be here. And so instead of working an 8-to-5 job and, having taken the time out for myself, I'm all the time, every time doing things in science and over service commit. And, as the one woman said in the thing that, all these little small things kind of add up and they take away from who we are in our time to do other meaningful things in life. And even this panel, I have 2 grants that are due next week. And, I put in the time to do this panel because I think it's really important, and it's so important. But as I'm watching the video, I'm thinking like, I should probably be working on that grant that I need to get, right? But, those are the sacrifices that we make because this is important to us. And hopefully one day we won't have to make those sacrifices and we can just focus on our science. So, yeah.
So I just had an observation that I'm sure other people picked up on, but I think it's important to bring up. So when Jane Willenbrink actually brought up the Title IX against David Marchand, it was, she specifically said, I waited until I got tenure and then I did it. So I guess I want to bring up the essentially systemic problem. Like maybe this is, this could be happening to more junior members in scientific academic world, females primarily, and then they're just keeping quiet because they don't feel that they have the power to, or they're worried about job security. And then worse, which I see happening with a lot of my colleagues, we're losing really brilliant, intelligent scientists in academia who are just fed up and leaving for other types of positions, which may or may not have this problem, or it's believed that they have less of this problem, probably because of the less of a pyramid scheme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't tenured.
So,
Susanna.
Yeah, one of the recommendations of this National Academy of Sciences report was exactly that, to diffuse the hierarchical and dependent relationship between trainees and faculty. So this is for trainees and faculty, but even faculty with faculty. So as long as everyone is dependent on someone above for getting your degree or getting a promotion, then you are trapped, right? You feel that you're trapped. So one of the recommendations actually from that panel was, that I think is fantastic, but is difficult because of money, is for graduate students, for example, that there would be a pool of money. They don't depend directly from of the graduate advisors grant. Like we saw the example of the student that had to leave because the graduate advisor wouldn't pay for her anymore, or the chair said you have to leave. So there could be mechanisms. I think the problem is instituting those changes. So there are a lot of recommendations. I think it will take a long time and a lot of money to be able to accomplish them. But I think having something like this, I thank Christie for putting this together. I think it's an amazing open discussion, and that's the way to go ahead and make some change.
Yeah. And I think us having, Aimee as the equity advisor is somebody that we can go to. You don't have to be tenured to go and talk to her. So just having somebody that we could go talk to and talk about issues and say, this happened to me, am I crazy? Is this something, what should I do kind of thing? And just even to get the validation that, no, you're not actually crazy, that's very powerful for us as well, just to, kind of be able to go forward and be able to address situations.
And I did want to point out, I don't know if there's anybody here from the AWIS chapter here at UCI, is there? No, there is an American Women in Science chapter here at UCI. If you Google it, you can get a hold of them. So I'm one of their mentors. I don't know, you guys may be too. And they have people from industry who come in and mentor. And I think it's a great way for you to get peer support, because that am I crazy thing is super important, because most of that iceberg is under the water. Right? We can all see the really obvious stuff. He grabbed her, he propositioned her, he cornered her, right? But the more subtle things, you're always asking yourself, is that bias? Or am I not good enough? Or am I whatever, right? And so the more you see the patterns, that's the thing about being equity advisor. It has helped me see it over and over. By talking to your peers, it can really help you have that validation that's important, I think, for self-esteem and continuing in the discipline.
Yeah, Angeline.
So first of all, thank you all so much for the panel. I'm going to try not to get emotional because I was like crying through half the thing. But I don't know if this is a question that, you all can actually help answer or anything, but especially when like Dr. Burks was talking and she was talking about how not just being a woman, but being a woman of color, like it's just compounds on top of everything. And like 2% of women of color have PhDs and like 3%, are provosts. And it's just like, what's the point, right? Like, it's like I'm in grad school and I'm doing all this, but it just feels like what is the point?
I would say the point is that you're in graduate school and you're kicking ass. I mean, that's the point, is that, we need to, I'll give you a hand.
You will lead us.
Is that we need strong, women of color to, be able to kind of speak, and you do that very well. And I do have to admit, so if you don't know Angeline, so she's the president and founder of Black in Neuro, which is a grassroots movement to increase the visibility of Black women and men in neuroscience. And so, she's given panels, like this, mostly on Zoom, I guess, because COVID and stuff, but she spoke to audiences as well, and she does a lot of these really amazing initiatives, and she's, written commentaries on how to be mentors for in, like, nature and that kind of thing. So she's done some really amazing things, and so, I took inspiration from you when I was getting really nervous coming here. So, and I think that's the point, is that we need to support each other and inspire each other. And, if I could do it, anybody else in here can do it, and just kind of having that kind of a perspective, I think.
Yeah, I want to follow in Christie and say, Angeline, you made a difference for me. Absolutely. Like listening to the things that you've said and brought up, it made me think a lot, and it changed the way I think. So what you're doing has totally made a difference. It's been worth it. And I have two kind of sad quotes when I start to feel sad. One is, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, which is true, and nothing worth having is easy to get, right? So those are the things I tell myself when I start feeling down and out. But really, you have made a difference for many people around you.
Yeah. And I know you'll continue to do so as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry.
I just want to add to the topic real quick. So I came here 2 years ago, shortly before COVID, and so I'm a white woman, so I'm in this case already privileged, which I didn't know before, and so I came here, and South California was also part of, like, I wanted to learn different cultures, learn more, but also knew that it's said to be pretty welcoming and for everybody. So I came here and I made a lot of friends from different cultures, different nationalities, and I learned so much about myself, about the world. So I would say we need you and we need everybody, just so that also me as a white woman, I can learn about that and see how, I don't know, grow. I don't know how to say it, but we need everybody.
And seconding that, I think that, and that's why they talk about diversity, right? We can have a completely different take on the same problem, see it with different eyes. So your perspective is going to be very important, and someone else's perspective is going to be very important, and they will all build together to advance knowledge. And it's really, as they said towards the end of the movie, how much we've lost already by not allowing women to progress as it was in the past. So.
And I think there's some strength in the numbers too, that 2%, right, of Black women. It used to be 2% of women, right? And now we've moved that needle point up. It's not like 50% still, but we've moved that needle point up, and it took people to do that, and so I think that's...
But I want to recognize that this has had a cost to you, and maybe that's why you're asking this question, and I appreciate everything you've given, honestly.
Yeah. Hey, Andrew?
Yeah, so first of all, this is a great panel for me to educate myself that this is happening, because throughout my graduate careers, I've worked with so many wonderful women faculties, researchers. So never in my mind that I have an idea of they are inferior. So this is pretty shocking. Like as a man, like already start thinking like how would I able to help those women to be their allies instead of like ignoring the situation, or like how may I best to support women researchers. So like we're all in this, solving the big chaos of brain or other sciences, just do science together. So this is a great panel. I just want to share my feelings. So.
That's great. So how can we, I'll take Andrew's question, I'll turn it back on the audience. So what do you all think? What are some ways that we can make it better? Yeah, back of the room.
So one of the really things that really got to me, and my main emotion watching it was anger. When I came in, I forget the name of the gentleman who went to Antarctica, and he was like, yeah, no, I was watching it happen, and I knew that he was being a dick, but it wasn't bothering her. And I was like, it shouldn't have to bother her. It shouldn't have to get to the point where she's sobbing or having a mental breakdown. And Andrew, you saying like, oh, like what can I do as a man? That would have been his point to step in and said, hey dude, that's not cool, because obviously he's not listening to her. And that was really just my like main emotion, and like I just couldn't get out of it. And it's like, how do you sit and like watch someone just go through that? And because obviously, yes, it's going to have an effect on her.
I agree. Thanks, Sam. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the bystander effect, right? We see it. There was just, where is it, New York? A woman was raped in the subway, and people are taking videos of it. Like, how does that even happen, right? And so I think it's just checking yourself and saying, is this situation right? And if the answer is no, or even maybe no, then, saying something,
I did want to acknowledge that sometimes it can be hard, the sort of speaking truth to power thing. I mean, I've been around senior professors who've said things, and I'm like, ooh, right? And all I can manage is sort of an awkward silence, right? And so when you're in those situations, what can you do? And one thing you can do is also check in with the person who's, I don't like using the word victim, but I think it's the best word, right? If he had asked her, or even just shown some support for her and sort of helped her and maybe in some ways said, do you need something from me? Can I help you? That's something that I think lots of people appreciate, just checking in.
One thing there was that there was no physical harm, but it could have gone into a point where there is physical harm. But there was a lot of mental harm. And when you see something like that, you have to stand up. And it is understandable that maybe he also was careful because he was a graduate student, right? But as Aimee said, just at least show support. And for any bystander, I think that that's what is needed. Just show support, and if you see someone that is hurting, just go and help.
Yeah, and I think there's also strength in numbers. So, having other allies in the room who are allies, that you can then say, like, did you just see that happen? And then get that validation that, to where then it can be addressed, I think is an important thing. Yeah.
Well, Christie, you just totally made me think of something else. So sometimes I do get up my gumption and I'll say, that's not right, in faculty meeting or something, right? And afterwards, a lot of times people will sneak up to me or send me emails or leave me thanks for doing that. I really appreciate it. I felt the same way, but I was afraid to say anything. So even that gesture, it makes me feel so much better to know that people appreciated what I did and I wasn't crazy and I wasn't alone. So even that kind of lower risk action is helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see, we could do one last. We do have treats and beverages out there, so.
It brought up again a lot of emotions, and I was really disappointed in myself because I grew up in a society where I was conditioned in such a way, because I grew up where men would look down women and speaking again in terms of women in science. So it was like, okay for them to, kind of say, okay, she doesn't deserve or whatever. They would be looked down upon. And I have my male friends around who would also come up to me and they would comment on a woman scientist and, okay, she's a woman, she has to take care of the family and stuff, and she does not do good science. And if she publishes something good and doing good in the career, it's like, okay, she is getting around, like not the straight path and, the turnabout and things. And I would feel bad, but I wouldn't speak up. I mean, I had points in my mind, but even as a woman, I think we should speak up when something being said is like not, on the right path. And when I see, so I have a lot of men in the audience. So if they like kind of, how can they help us? So maybe it's kind of going forward, you should kind of be very present in the moment and like think before what you speak, because sometimes maybe you do not want to hurt anyone, but then unknowingly it just, social conditioning that you just tend to, look down on your women counterpart and just say these things. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I would say, too, that it's not just men. I think women can also be very negative towards other women. And this is something that, it's how we're socialized to be the one, right? That there's only one woman that's going to be successful. There's only one woman that's going to get that, achievement award or whatever it is. And so we're always competing with each other instead of supporting each other. So I find, talking about implicit biases, I have implicit biases where I have to check myself and say, wait, before I say that this piece of, research is crap, let me actually go read it, and let me see, and get an honest thing and not just make an assumption because it's this other, brilliant woman in the field that I feel maybe a little threatened by or jealous of or whatever it might be, right? But just even checking ourselves to say, do I have any implicit bias in the situation? And then being able to then, kind of go forward with that. But I think you're right. I think we're all kind of, guilty at some point in our lives of, doing these types of things. So. Okay. So I guess any closing remarks? We'll start with Aimee, I guess.
I just thank you guys all for coming and thinking about this. And I did want to say, invite women speakers. And when you go to a meeting and there aren't enough women, go talk to the organizers. And when you're organizing the meeting, invite women.
I have to say, I just did that. I had a chat with somebody because there was one woman keynote out of 10. So.
And Christie did mention also nominate women for awards and just talk to your friends about what women are accomplishing, those that you know. And even if it is not that you know of them, just talk about what women have accomplished in the past as well. I think that's just talking about those accomplishments will help everyone as well.
Yeah. And I would just say, don't be afraid to ask other people to nominate you. As women, we often sit back and think, well, if I deserve this award, somebody will come out of the heavens and magically give it to me, right? But what men do that you don't know is that they'll go around and ask for people to nominate them. So it's about time that women did that as well to kind of increase our likelihood of getting awards, right? Because if you're not being considered, then you're definitely not going to get it. So, and I would just say pay it forward and kind of take what we've discussed here today, maybe, make some other people watch this movie as well, maybe have some discussions with other people. And one of the things, mottos that I like to live by is just kind of leave the world better than how you found it. And that was one of the main driving forces of why I wanted to put myself up here in this hot spot where, I didn't know what was going to be coming at us. So that was a really amazing discussion that we have. So thank you. Thank you for that really great discussion. And I hope you all continue to identify those sources of inequality, highlight it to others, and really work actively towards getting resolution. And then I invite you all to continue the conversation out in the lobby area where we have some treats, some food, and some beverages as well. So thank you, everybody.